Hey, Geekscapists! Welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, strap yourselves in for some pop culture talk. That would be movies, video games, comic books, TV, all of the pop culture talk that is fit to print. No, it's not going to be printed at all. We're going to be doing audio. If I'm laughing at the beginning, it's because my friend Paul Wilson's coming up on the show. He's made this brand new slasher throwback retro horror movie, Deer Camp '86. We're going to be talking about it. So if you guys are horror fans and you love stuff like The Evil Dead, that's a visual reference that I was like, oh, it kind of looks like some Evil Dead out in the woods getting chased. If you guys like the Friday 13th movies, if you guys just love slashers, and actually, if you like fun takes on that, like something like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, stuff like that, I think that you guys are going to get a kick out of Deer Camp '86. We're going to be talking to Paul Wilson about it, and I'm laughing because when I started the show, I went live, and before it switched to this mug right here, if you're watching on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube, I had Paul's video up on the screen, and I was like, oh, well, Paul could start the show if he wants. He's not going to do any worse of a job than I'm going to be doing. But at the last minute, I swapped it to your host, me, Jonathan London, the dude who's been doing this for 18 years and hasn't gotten any better at it. I do appreciate the messages. How great was Joel Gonzalez last week? The Sotzers is such a great organization. I sent him a couple T-shirts, a couple Geekscape shirts, and then we've been going back and forth about the state of things. He went really in depth on the state of filmmaking post-pandemic, and Latino filmmaking, and the strikes and all of that stuff. So it was pretty informative. If you love like the business of showbiz, just go and check that episode out. It's in the feed. We are on the road to Comic-Con. We will be there in late July, but about a week after that during that, and then the week after that is the window for my daughter's arrival. I don't know if she's coming before Comic-Con. You won't see me in San Diego if that's the case, or if she comes as scheduled shortly after Comic-Con, at which point I'll go down on Tuesday with Matt Kelly, set up the booth, and then tell Matt that he can throw away the booth when we're done. We're not going to bring any of the fancy stuff. I went through storage this weekend, and I was like, okay, that could be cool for the booth. That could be cool for the booth. But everything must go. So if you go down to San Diego and you drop by our new location, they moved us, and we'll put that up soon, where we'll be found on the San Diego Comic-Con floor. That stuff is either going home with Matt Kelly or it's going in the trash, because I'm leaving Thursday morning. I'll be hanging out Wednesday preview night, and then Thursday morning I was like, I gotta go back to LA and go be ready to be a dad. So I'm excited this summer. It is cutting my San Diego Comic-Con short, but Geekscape will be there. We'll have 8 people on the ground. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and then we're gonna have a whole slew of people signing at our booth, doing promotions. These are comic book people, movie people, video game people, actors, directors, artists, like all sorts of stuff. And it's just a party like it is every year. So you're in the right place. If you're subscribing to this podcast on any of these feeds, maybe it's the podcast, maybe it's video, you're going to be in the right place to know where to find us in San Diego this summer. But the us is a loose term, because I'll be right back here getting ready to be a papa, which I'm super excited about. All right. Paul Wilson's on the show. He is part of the Wilson Van. That is a rock group with his brother Patrick. He's got another brother. I'm trying to remember his name. But the Patrick brothers have this rock group there. And they play classic music, like, rock music like Van Halen. They also play their own thing as well. Their music is featured pretty prominently in this movie, Deer Camp '86. The whole thing rocks. We're going to talk to Paul here pretty soon, and let's just start some Geekscaping, all right? Let's go. I honestly should have just had Paul start the show. Do a little. Now it's time for Paul Wilson to start the show, and then we go to it. We actually have an intro, and I should have played it. Um, I've got it right here. Check this out. This is Paul's brother Patrick introducing Geekscape. I'm going to play it right here. Check this out.
I'm Patrick Wilson. You're watching Geekscape.
Yeah, that's right. That's Patrick Wilson. We have his brother Paul here. They're in the Wilson band, the band. But Paul, you can see him in the Conjuring movies with his brother. You can see him in Angels in America. That's the adaptation, I think, of the play that came out in the early '90s or early 2000s. And then he can be seen in this movie Deer Camp 86, which is in theaters now. You can get all the information at deercamp86.com, and it'll soon be on, like, in July, all the video streamers. So if you guys are into horror, I think you guys are going to love it. Let's talk to Paul right now about putting this movie together. And, I also have a famous brother, so we're going to talk about that. Maybe we'll start like a support group, that sort of thing. All right, how's that sound? Paul, any chance of doing a support group? My brother Paul was a WWE wrestler for a stretch, and he has so many wrestling fans that people are like, oh, I didn't know you had a brother. And I'm just kind of like over here by myself,
Well, sometimes you just got to kind of like blaze through it. I mean, and at the end of the day, like I have my Jack Daniels base. So, I don't care what my brother says. We have fun. And by the way, I have a lot of fun with my brother. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, big time. Big time. Did you guys grow up there in Florida? Where are you from, dude?
We all Virginians.
Oh, really?
From the Richmond area, as they say up there, outside of the Tidewater area. What's really fun about that part of the world is you have like almost everything. You have obviously all the seasons, and you have a really good influence, I think, from people from, the so-called above the Mason-Dixon line, as my grandmother would say, and then below. And then that was where my mother was from, the kind of Eastern Shore, and, from South Carolina, to Eastern Virginia. Then my dad's from the mountains of Virginia. And Big Stone Gap was the town. And Patrick and I, our first movie together was named after the eponymous town, Big Stone Gap, with Ashley Judd and Whoopi Goldberg, directed and created by Adriana Trigiani, who herself grew up in Big Stone Gap, which is, I think, closer to the capitals of 7 other states than it is to Richmond. I mean, it's way out there. So we are Virginians at heart, but in the nomadic world that was, especially during this, 80s and 90s, of television news people, our father kind of moved around in different markets. We were in St. Louis when the Cardinals won the World Series in '82. Very important. Okay. And if you were here, I would show you my pennant, because I have it right there. I'm looking at it. Go Cardinals. And then we were in Charlotte and Virginia Beach. And then we've been here in the Tampa Bay area since '82. So how old am I? 56. Yeah. So it's been more than half of our lives. So you could say we're Floridians, but not like crazy Floridians.
Yeah, not Florida man Floridians. Maybe. I don't know. I'm starting to get a gist of you, Paul. We've only known each other for a couple of days. We've been fast friends. Shout out. We got connected last week by our friend Leo Partible, and
the great Leo Partible.
He's incredible, and he's a connector, and I love that guy. So you got to have a little bit of weird to be hanging out with Leo.
Well, first of all, artists are weird, right? Creative people are weird.
The good ones
because you got to kind of follow your own path, right? I mean, I go back to my Shakespeare, to thine own self be true, and whatever that is, be who you are. That's the fun part. I mean, I haven't worked a day in my life. It's all fun. Well, Leo would say that too.
Yeah, well, I was telling a filmmaker earlier today, he's going through a bit of a life change. We go through those things. I'm about to go through one in August, like the birth of our
Daddy-o.
Kid. Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And he's going through a dissolution of a dissolving of a family, not so much an addition of a family. And as a filmmaker, he's having, I said, and he's just in his head. And I said, hey, as an artist, you just got to go for it and not be. And it's tough because when you're in your head, you're even worse of an artist, right? Like it's hard enough. It's hard enough. Yeah, it's hard enough to be a human, and then to be an artist on top of a human. I mean, we're self-conscious as humans, and then doubly so as artists. It took me forever to call myself an artist in any form, but
it doesn't Jonathan, doesn't sound so, which I think is interesting. It's almost like going to a job interview and you have to like talk about your resume. It's very unnatural. So to say that, like you said, I'm a creative guy, I'm an artist. It's like, did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
Get away from him, son. It might be contagious. So, I mean, talk to me about you and what's your third brother's name? My apologies on that one.
So I'm the oldest, so I would be Mo, and then Mark Wilson is the middle.
Okay.
So he and I are 18 months apart, and then about 5.5 years later, after we were born, Patrick arrived.
What the hell is that all about?
Milkman's kid, as they say. I mean, blonde and blue-eyed, so there's that. But we have an incredible, and I think part of it is, the bond that we have, started with music, which is kind of hilarious that's become something that's a bit of a staple of our reality. And we can get into that later, but we all grew up in it. My mom was in the Episcopal Church growing up. We were the, choir kids. So we grew up, dare I say, performing at church, but singing. So music was always the structure, the logical reality of music was always like the soundtrack of our lives. And then it was, Dad's on TV every night. And it was, TV is kind of fun. We were all around cameras. So to have, and Mark does the news every single night here in Tampa, Monday through Friday, two times a night.
That's awesome.
He's inherited Dad's kind of chair, if you will. And I don't mean that like in a nepotism way, but no. He was actually hired by a general manager who didn't even know that my dad, who was still at the station, was his father. So that's a really fun story. But then, Patrick and Mark and I, we always kind of grew up with it. So it was just like, and I'll credit them, at my elderly age, the best thing I think in, this borderline, quick retrospective is they let us just be creative. They let us be who we wanted to be and do what we wanted to do. And that's like probably the best gift of all.
Mm-hmm. And so when you started gravitating towards the cameras, like Patrick's in The Conjuring, he was in Watchmen, I'm just listing the ones that Geekscapists know. Obviously the two Aquaman movies. He plays Ocean Master. We've talked about him here on Geekscape. Who started gravitating to performing in front of cameras first? Or do you guys
probably
just
me.
All jump into it? Talk to me about that. Like
probably me.
Yeah. And then how'd that go?
I think my first, we were living in Charlotte. It was 1978. Okay. And I had a chance to work with Joe Campanella. You know who that is?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I was born in 78.
Okay.
Late 78, almost 79.
There was a TV show, speaking of Van Halen, there was a TV show with Valerie Bertinelli called One Day at a Time. And Joe Campanella was the dad on One Day at a Time. And I was in a Napa Auto Parts commercial at 12, a Christmas commercial with Joe Campanella. And I didn't know who Valerie was. It's kind of funny that now we're playing Van Halen for thousands of people every, couple months. But that was like my first foray into the camera work as a kid. Now, we had been around it, of course, and when your dad's on TV, it's funny because a lot of people growing up, it was like, what's it like seeing your dad on TV every day? Well, what's it like having your dad be a plumber or your mom, being a teacher? Like, that's all we knew. There was
nobody else knew your dad of the plumber and your mom of the teacher. People know. I mean, your dad is in way more households, seen by way more people than the in their defense.
But that
than the
didn't. But
teacher and
Jonathan,
the
that didn't
plumber.
resonate to us. That was
Right.
not. That was just our normal. There was no other point of reference.
Sure.
Like we never thought like, oh, what if he was an architect? Well, your dad's an architect, or your mom's a teacher. And like that's just what we knew. So for us, it was normal. So being around it was like, well, this is what we're supposed to do. And then we kind of, and I was a kid that was never meant to really be the lead of this first opera at 9 years old. And I was just the matinee kid. I was the understudy. And then the lead, who was, I was 9, he was 14. He broke his leg in rehearsal. Yeah.
Jesus.
And then all of a sudden it's like, you're on. Like, oh, what? Okay. And I was just, childlike, but okay, fine, I'm ready. My mom was my music teacher. I knew the music. And all of a sudden it was like, this is kind of fun. This is kind of fun. And then we all kind of got into it. And obviously, Patrick kind of focused really hard on, being that. And all through high school, we did Shakespeare together in high school. We had a really nice high school in St. Petersburg, Shorecrest Prep, that really kind of focused us. I mean, we had our spring musicals, but we had Shakespeare. We were doing Merry Wives of Windsor, in ninth grade.
That's a lot for a high schooler.
Right. But it was like, that was kind of our thing. And it was like, that was normal. So then we all kind of like, well, this is what we should do. And we, my mom, in the early 80s was running these kind of choir camps, in North Carolina, which was exotic to leave Florida. Thank God we did.
Hey kids, you like trees?
Just to get out of here.
You want more trees, less swamp?
Cockroaches. Exactly.
Different kind of trees. We got different trees up here. It's very exotic.
And there was a lip sync contest. And the lip sync contest was, do whatever you can. You cannot use real instruments. And we had this cabin next door, and I had this crazy idea. I'm like, and we heard Panama.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, we can't play jump because that means keyboard. Panama is interesting. And I went into this cabin and I was 15, maybe 15, under construction. And I grabbed the saber saw and cut out the Kramer Eddie Van Halen. And all of a sudden, and then got a mop and took the strings and made strings because you couldn't use any real instruments.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're doing Panama. And Mark, you're going to play Panama. And all of a sudden, that was our first kind of foray into Van Halen. Next thing you know, about 16 years ago, it was, hey, let's do something for Mark's birthday. And since then, my brother Mark has made all of his guitars. He's an exquisite musician. And he played violin growing up. And of course, when he heard Eruption, like a lot of people, it was down with the violin, up with the guitar, taught himself how to play. And now we're standing at about $650,000 that we have raised for charity. We always play for charity. We never, none of us make $1, but we have so much fun sharing that music. But it's just like the skit has just kept going, Jonathan. That's
So like the Wilson van, that's obviously a Van Halen reference. And, that kid who broke his leg, did he ever come back for revenge because you took his life? You took his career? You took the life that should have been his?
I think he was smart and got out of showbiz. Joey Thompson was his name. And
how long did you keep talking to Joey? You never talked to Joey?
I haven't talked to him in a while.
Well, here's a surprise. We got Joey here. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, thank God. I hope you're good.
Joey's here. And hey, Joey.
Job.
You took my life, you son of a bitch. You took everything from me. You snot-nosed kid.
Wasn't my fault.
He's got this demented flashback where you're throwing ball bearings out onto the floor for him to break his leg so you can take his lead.
I'm not going to deny or confirm that.
Everybody on this show eventually becomes some form of a hero or a villain and has their own rogues gallery. We're just building yours out, Paul. He's out there waiting.
No, yeah. I'm with you.
He'll come back.
I love what you're doing. Keep doing it.
So this Deer Camp 86, what made you want to do a slasher? And I think we gotta at Geekscape, if you look up the movie and you go watch it, you're gonna be like, wait, I don't see Paul Wilson's name anywhere on this damn thing. This thing said it was directed and made by what? How do you even pronounce that name?
L. Van Dyke Sabutson. Come on. Well, first of all. I was attracted to it because my friend Eric Mishila and Eric Mishila and Harold Kronk, called me during COVID and said, no one's doing anything. Let's figure something out. And what do creatives do? When they kind of get confined, they create. So we wanted to make something. And we were like, well, we got to figure out like the lockdown thing, which we did. And everyone, was in masks and we had all that protocols done. But they were exposed to this message that is a very serious message about missing and murdered Native American people and, indigenous people and mainly women, although, sadly, boys and men go missing. And, it's hard for cops just to roll up on sovereign land. So that was the seed. And it was a billboard that they saw and said, let's write something. So they kind of came to me and said, hey, can we pull this off? And I love the message. And I love, it's kind of like for us, and by the way, it's not a slasher. There's no like gratuitous violence. I'll say it's,
No, yeah, you're right.
More or less justified violence. Certainly there's some. And it's, there's a lot of crazy body language, as my grandmother from Virginia would say. But, that's the way it's all set in 86. And that's the way I think, this group that, had the sojourn to go to a cabin. Unfortunately, they missed, they didn't go to the cabin first. They went to this bar and then it turns into a melee. And then they antagonize or let's say awaken a native spirit that renders justice. And I'm going to leave it right there, buddy.
Sure.
But it's fun. I think it's fun.
Well, I think the thing that I noticed right off the bat is, yes, you're doing a bit of a retro horror, but the comedy and I think the speed of the dialogue and the pacing, that stuff feels modern. It feels like I think if you sit through an actual 80s horror, it's dated. And this one, Geekscape, is going to look like one of those movies. It's going to look like there's been filmmakers who go and make stuff like this. We said Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I think Cabin Fever, that first Eli Roth film, has that kind of texture to it as well. But the humor is something that if you've been listening for the last 20 minutes to Paul talk, the dialogue in this is zippy. The humor is fun, and you're bound, and it's kind of a fun little plate spin with all the different characters. They're all getting their little moments to shine.
Is a great way to say that, Jonathan. That's a really, and I'll say this: the whole thing was shot up there, and kind of like if this is Michigan, we were like right there, right, or like Ludington area, right, almost not north, but like right middle. And it was October, and it was gorgeous, and we wanted to make Michigan a character because it is. And it's beautiful in the fall. It's beautiful all the time of year, except maybe when it's frozen over. But whatever. We had this really great commune of sorts where we had a lot of friends, and Harold Kronk and Eric Mishila pulled this off with, like I said, $4 and a bucket of chicken. But they had a lot of friends that believed in the message, and we had a tribal elder on set every day to make sure we represented from the Little Creek tribe, that we represented them culturally properly. Because we wanted to, I didn't want to be the white guy talking about this story. But at the end of the day, we had a conference call a couple weeks ago from several tribal elders, females from all over the country that went, we saw the movie. I was like, I don't want to be the white guy talking about this. And they're like, we need the white guy talking about this. So it was kind of vindicating to know that at the end of the day, yes, it's a horror romp, more thriller than horror, more beer drinking than hunting. But there's a message there. And that's why I was attracted to it. And I trusted the team. And we had really a great, great, great team from top to bottom.
What are you pulling as influences, references, as you're trying to put together like a visual guide for this movie? And we still have to address the nom de plume that you're using as a filmmaker in this movie.
Are you going to edit this?
No.
Because I can tell you, the nom de plume, or nom de guerre, but the nom de plume was effectively a tactical strategy from the director himself, who did not want to ostensibly put his name on the movie, the project,
Right.
because he had done so many movies that were in the secular, in the non-secular kind of Christian, God's Not Dead movies. He was an incredibly great talent. I mean, Harold Kronk is an incredible talent, but he didn't want to have people look at this and go, the director of God's Not Dead.
Right.
But
Right.
I think it's a feature, not a bug. And
Right.
in a lot of ways, at the end of the day, it became kind of that story of, look, if you put it, and he'll tell you this too when you talk to him, if I put my name on it, people might not have been like, oh, that's the God's Not Dead guy. But the God's Not Dead guy is pretty good and incredibly talented. And it was he and his partner, Eric Mashila, that kind of manifested this story into something that we wanted to, it's kind of a study of synectics. We wanted to kind of make it strange and familiar, and the familiar strange. So I think a lot of audience members might, those of a certain age, might go, this feels like Predator.
Sure. But Predator is Friday the 13th, just without the campers, and you get
There you go. And it's a
people,
fun little cabin in the woods story that has an entirely, let's say, supernatural twist that at the end of the day is important to tell that message. Not to sound like it's a cause movie. There is a cause behind the movie. And the cause is because we wanted to make something. We might have made probably one of the only independent movies in the middle of COVID.
Right.
When we started this in 2020.
But
September of 2020. Right in almost the beginning of that.
You start to watch this movie and you see early on billboards of missing Indigenous women, and the billboards that were the influence for the idea of the film. There's a version of them in the film. You know what I just watched literally this week was Smoke Signals. You remember the Adam Beach film from like 98? Yeah. It was a Miramax produced indie. It won Sundance. Smoke Signals with Adam Beach, and it's incredible. It's incredible. And then
a movie that should not be lost. That's a really great story.
It's awesome. And the woman who played Pocahontas for Disney is in the film as well. And the whole movie is incredible. And it's kind of funny that Deer Camp 86 came to Geekscape at this time because Heidi and I are also watching Dark Winds. And Dark Winds is the show on AMC, folks, that is, this guy Zan, he's in Reservoir Dogs. He's in a ton of stuff. You've seen this actor in a million places, and he's a cop, an Apache cop on the res in Arizona, and it's fantastic. And so, something about the indigenous stories have been in the London household the last like 2 weeks, and here we are with another one in Deer Camp 86. It's just a lot of fun, Geekscape. And I don't think we do get movies here where people are like, oh, we want to lean on the retro. We want to lean on the stuff we grew up with. And I think if you do that too much, you just end up with something that you want to watch. An audience doesn't want to watch it, but you want to watch it. And you realize that you've over dipped the Oreo into in the milk in your own enjoyment of this stuff, and it's gotten soggy, and you made a movie that is great for your sentiments and your memory of the material, but an audience doesn't connect with it, and that's a pretty careful kind of road to navigate. Does that make sense?
It's a hard needle to thread. I think you're right, and I'll say this and I think a lot of people will, might agree. There's so many soulless remakes that just don't have the hope or the heart or, let's say, and by the way, Deer Camp's not going to change the world. Okay. It's a fun romp, right?
Yeah. I mean, I compared it to like those, movies. Like there was one Jack Wilson Monster Hunter or something that we did early on that was great. I think Tucker and Dale is fun because there is a lot of fun run through the woods, but also there's humor. It feels modern. It looks old. It feels modern.
Like I said, to have Harold Kronk at the helm and Eric Mashila right there at Video Village to make sure this looked like it was $10 million and we did it for $4 and a bucket of chicken. And at the end of the day, artists create, and we all it was all hands on deck. I mean, they had, I should say, great friends, Rob and Becky Alway. I mean, local people that were like, oh, I got a truck. Oh, we can find a farm. Our friend has a farm. They've got a cabin, so that it's like the spirit, which is kind of strange in a weird way, because when I took my son to the Grand Rapids premiere a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. And we get off the plane, go to our little ride share, and there's Ted Raimi, because he lives in Grand Rapids still. Mm-hmm. And, my son's like, I had like a Scorpions t-shirt on. And Ted's like, cool shirt, dude. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then my son's like, dude, that was Ted Raimi. And I went, oh my God, yes.
He's such a nice guy too.
He's so sweet. And, and Jack turns around and basically pats me on the shoulder and says, I'm going to talk to him. I'm like, go.
Yeah.
And my son introduces himself and says, I met you at this and da-da-da. And then it's like, here's my dad. I'm like, hey, I'm Dad. What are you doing up here? This is my hometown. I'm like, oh, I got this movie called Deer Camp 86. He's like, what's that? I'm like, well, not to say it this way, but you inspired us a long time ago to make something really creative and fun and inspirational. And let's just say an independent creative project. And that's what we did. And we did it during COVID. And it was kind of like a fun little moment to, like, of all people to run into. It was Ted Raimi.
It's kismet for sure. And
he was so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the sweetest guy.
Really nice. Ted was a guest of ours at the first ZombieCon in Seattle, along with Bruce Campbell. And I remember Ryan got Bruce ordained so he could do a zombie wedding. And everybody in the wedding party was a zombie. And I remember the father of the bride had a stake through his body. I filmed the whole thing, and Ted was great. And they didn't use they acted like it was a church, but it was a Necronomicon instead of a Bible. And Ted was just always wonderful to talk to, and very, very approachable.
Super fun,
into all that stuff.
Fun. And it's like I think that's kind of the vein in which we wanted to, create this movie. And I not speaking for Harold and Mashila, but they wanted to make a story that, as we're sitting there going, the world is ending, theaters are closing, some are going bankrupt. What happened to independent storytelling? What happened to like telling a story or making a movie that our 17 or 18-year-old selves would have gone like, yeah, I want to watch that. That's what we tried to make in Deer Camp 86.
You guys were in 25 theaters this past weekend as of the recording of this Geekscape, and you can find more theaters or wherever you want to see the movie. Search deercamp86.com and see where they're playing, because if you're listening to this later on, maybe midsummer, you're going to be able to find the stuff on VOD. But all the details are at deercamp86.com. This post-strike climate, you made the movie during the COVID. Now you're trying to release the movie post-strike. There's been tons of hem and hawing about how, like, Furiosa did not do what they expected it to do. These, Free Guy, the Fall Guy didn't do what it's supposed to do. These big studio films are stumbling here and there. Maybe Deadpool and Wolverine will save us. And what kind of room does that leave for Deer Camp 86 to start in 25 theaters and maybe grow, or maybe find enough of an audience that the noise carries into VOD so that there can be even greater viewership there? Like, this climate seems exploded, and how's Humpty Dumpty going to get back together, or should it get back together? Because did the old system even work to begin with? Does that make sense, Paul?
No, I think you're making several good points. And in my opinion, theaters aren't going away. The communal experience will be there. Now, will they look like, 55, 75 seat theaters in the future? Probably. Will you see a 475 seat theater moving forward? Probably not.
How cool would it be if we all went back to grindhouses?
Well, I mean,
or you had to four-wall a movie. You had to wait for a movie to come to your town.
That's right. And I think that you may be onto something, because I do think we may be in kind of a renaissance, if you will, of the independent theater. Certainly the studios. And I've done a couple big studio movies, and love, just being involved in like the Conjuring franchise.
What about the Aquamans? Did Pat not get you into the Aquamans?
No, I was busy shooting this movie, so I couldn't do
Oh
that.
man, you could have played a shark or like done like a dolphin noise or something.
Ah,
You know what? That's not cool. That's not. I try to involve my
That-
brother in everything. He would have. You could have done like a flipper. You could have done something.
Yeah, we're picking the right thing to reunite at. So we've done 2 movies together, and
Okay.
we're working on something else. But
All
anyway,
right.
I do think there's space for it.
What about a blowfish? I'm kidding. I'm just being stupid, Paul. I'm sorry.
By the way, I love James Gunn's Suicide Squad.
It's incredible.
Like,
That his suicide,
Right?
you know, and
that
I'm not.
I think is the next version of studio movies.
Well, he's running the whole
out of
DC.
just completely
thing.
out of the world, insane.
I've
and
got
fun.
the most faith in James, and James has said some.
Me
James
too.
has done some cameos on Geekscape as press stuff. His brother Sean is a friend, and he's been on Geekscape. Sean's wonderful, and James is wonderful. I love those movies, and not to if we're gonna. I mean, I enjoyed the Aquaman movies. I'm not saying that stuff to be poking fun at Pat. I really enjoy Watchmen. I like Zack Snyder's Watchmen. Geekscape
Watchmen, I'll say,
Geekscape
might
is know
have
this,
been
but
10
I like.
years ahead of it. 10 years ahead of its time.
Yes. Well, I think the ending in Alan
It
Moore's book.
still holds up.
Yeah, Alan Moore's ending is like a little left field with the giant squid and this and that. I'm like, okay, it works really great to set up the HBO show, which is in the same canon. But I think that what Zach did with the film that Pat was in making
Might have been Zach's top 5 best work, I'll say.
I like the ending of that Watchmen
because the
a lot.
premise, let's just go back to Watchmen for a second. The premise is absurd, and Alan Moore himself, who politely is a unabashed recluse, right?
Yes.
Said this would never get made, ever, never, and almost created it like screw pop culture. It'll never get made. And then they made it. After
He also did want it to get made because the rights battles that Alan Moore had been famously.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Sure,
I mean, here's the guy who gave us Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
But Watchmen. I mean, Richard Nixon is president for life.
Mhm.
It's an alternative universe.
I love Watchmen. Yeah.
And it holds up today. I don't know another superhero. I mean, there's a couple that can actually
your
look
buddy
fresh today.
Raimi's Spider-Man 2, I think, holds up very well.
Well, there's that. Yes, and there's
Spider-Man.
rumors that he's coming back for one more, which would be
Let's find out.
fantastic.
Well, you got to put our friend Paul Wilson in it, but I mean, all that to
I'll
say,
deliver
like, yes,
pizza for him.
we
Yes.
it's pizza time. That's what Peter did in part 2.
That's right.
I think you could play as manager. No, I think that I said it on the show. I said, guys, that first Aquaman movie, I remember the second I watched it saying that Aquaman movie, what else do you want? You saw some of the most epic, ridiculous, fun cartoon stuff there's going to be. It's a romp. And then that second one, when Jason Momoa and your brother are going through the tomb with the freaking octopi, like that's one of my favorite characters in cinema from 2023 Geekscapists. And if you missed it, too bad. There's an octopus. It's one of my favorite, or is it a squid? I don't know, but it's one of my favorite characters.
It's fantastic. It's like a comic book version of like a Lethal Weapon scene. I mean, there's such a great buddy cop thing going on there.
And Geeks, if you go to these comic book movies as 40-somethings, as 50-somethings, as 30-somethings, if you go there wanting it to be a movie for you and not a movie for kids so a kid will enjoy, like, yeah, I'm sorry, man, but like, I don't like the dark Batman stuff. I don't think I think it breaks. I think the realistic stuff, it breaks under the burden of its own realism. It's not supposed to be realistic. I think those things are fun.
They're fun. I mean, and I love what Chris Nolan did. I
do too.
What Christian did. And I love, obviously, what Heath did. And I love a lot of that tone. But I think what Peter Safran and James Gunn have done so well, and I cannot wait to see what they're about to do, but they've returned the fun. They seem to have returned, certainly Suicide Squad has returned the fun.
And Peacemaker,
you know what?
It's a blast.
Fun. Peacemaker, fun. I mean, absurd, fun.
Totally absurd.
Like, that's what it should be. And I think ultimately, although you can go buy a TV the size of your fridge, and turn it sideways for $500 and sit there at home and go, I need some, Uber Eats, and I'm going to pause this movie. There's still the communal experience for those big, giant movies. I think it's a wrong thing to say that, they're all about CGI and they're all, no, when it's appropriate, it's appropriate. Yes, a lot is overdone. And, for the independent little movie,
they
again,
can't do CGI.
They can't. Well, you got to get creative. I mean, like there's a scene. You saw the movie, right? You saw Deer Camp, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple moments where we see some things vibrating, right? That was done with. If you've seen those massagers that look like hair dryers without cords,
yes.
and they have little nubs on them and they vibrate. That's what Harold Kronk used to create some of those vibration scenes, all in camera. Just like that. And
I think
like,
some of that is
ingenuity.
Yeah. The idea that you're going to what was I watching recently that had a Hollywood. Oh, I was working with a film student who wanted to black out to do a static driving shot. And we talked about how he'd take the Duvetine and all the black wrap and he put it further away from the car so you could do light effects on the windows, even though the car's in a garage and the car's supposed to be driving. So you have to mimic. I was like, oh, you got to put the stuff a little further away so you can get lights in there and put light effects against the windows. And then you just have to have a little bit of a move on the car to give it a little bit of motion, but you can shoot a driving scene at night, absolutely, in your garage. Like there's no reason you can't. If you don't want to pay people for an overnighter, you could totally do it. So we talked through putting that footage together, and that's where I was talking about Hollywooding things. So Geekscape is, watch the Deer Camp 86 and see where you can see where people were Hollywooding stuff. And,
we saw
there's some hard stuff in this movie. You're also shooting on water at some point, and like that stuff's really hard. Filmmakers would bend away. They would turn away from that stuff. I write scripts.
That was Michigan in October at 3 a.m., which at that stage was 39 degrees.
You seem trying to kill people. I'm kidding.
It was like, really, we're doing this? And it's like, well, we got 2 days. Let's get it done. We had a 1987 or 6 Chevy Suburban.
Better not be an 87. Better not be an 87 in Deer Camp 86.
Well, I'm not going to confirm or deny that. But we had this great beast of a vehicle that we called the Beast that we had to roll. And we had to shoot all the scenes. And that was our picture car. And they were like in the car. And we had many driving sequences. And so we waited till the last, week or so to, destroy it. Because we had one take. And we had to get all of our scenes on the road done. Because that was it. And I think they sold the motor out of it and then used pulleys. This is the kind of stuff that is like, this is what creative people do. And it's like, to me, that was the most refreshing reality of like, and I like even had my little Sony A6 cam set up going, I might as well shoot this from like a third wide, just in case.
If you're going to roll a vehicle.
Just in case.
Everybody's cell phones better be pointed at the thing if you're going to roll the vehicle. Absolutely. You're going to get one take at it on it, Was that the biggest challenge of putting together Deer Camp 86? I think you're away from a microphone at this point, Paul.
What was the biggest challenge?
Was that the biggest challenge of Deer Camp 86?
No, COVID was the biggest challenge because we had to keep everyone away from going into town, which is a cute little town. And, that's the thing about, I think, a lot of people that don't understand making movies or maybe see part of the so-called movie process of, you get to hang out with those people. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're meeting people that you don't know, and you have 19 days to get a job done collectively, and then you may never see them ever again.
No, it's not summer camp.
And then you throw COVID and masks. So now we're all this and like, all right, see you at 8 a.m. Not 8:30, right?
Yeah.
So it was very focused work. That was the biggest challenge, and to keep people safe, and we did. And certainly to have that creative freedom to kind of do what we did was fun, but it was hard. In a lot of ways, it's like any vocation. You're thrown into a project, and you had to trust everybody. and those that you can't trust, you're out. We didn't have many of that, many of those issues, but we had a lot of fine. We're in. I mean, there are wardrobe and costume and production people that I just saw 2 weeks ago for the first time in 4 years without their mask. But we all had the common goal. And like Michael Caine once said, you don't get paid to act, you get paid to wait. That's what we did,
So, what are you doing next? Did it strike the bug? I mean, you and your brother have this project. Well,
we got a couple of things. I just 2 months ago was in Albuquerque. I believe it's pronounced Albuquerque, and played a guy named Richard Nixon for
that'll be cool.
Abrams project. It should be really fun. It's a show called Duster.
That'll be cool
with Josh Holloway. That'll be really fun. Yeah, we shot that out, which is amazing. You ever been there?
Oh, my mother's in Santa Fe.
Albuquerque is.
Yeah,
I had never been. I mean, I'm 56 years old. I didn't even know there were volcanoes there.
Oh yeah,
right. And it's kind of like California and Montana had a love child called New Mexico.
New Mexico is awesome. I absolutely love.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, my mother's just outside of Santa Fe, and I'm daydreaming about okay, so if we shoot a movie in South Carolina next year, we can drive there with the baby, because I'm always thinking now with transportation of the baby. So we'll drive through Santa Fe, visit my mom. We'll drive through Austin, visit my dad, and then we'll shoot for a month in South Carolina, and then we'll come back through there and see the parents again. And I'm just trying to think of the post-baby production schedule of independent projects, and in New Mexico has to be on it because my mother lives there. And a few days after the wedding, Geekscape is 4 days after we got married, I went off to the Santa Fe Film Festival and showed El Rey. You guys remember that? And El Rey is a movie I made very early on, and that's where I got yelled at by a grip, where I was like, guys, maybe this just isn't doable. And I remember my grip turning to me and goes, fuck you, let's get your movie done. And that was so badass, because I was ready to be like, let's not do the kitchen scene. We've already shot everything out, guys. We only have 2 hours left. We're never going to do this many setups in 2 hours. Let's scrap the kitchen scene. Let's bring everybody back next weekend, or let's bring everybody back in a couple days, which would have been 3 times as expensive. And I just remember this dude that Todd Bell hired. I never saw him again in my life. And he turns to me and he goes, fuck you, let's finish your movie. and he basically was like, dude, 1 hour overtime is gonna pretty much what we can gonna be even way less than bringing everybody back and refeeding them and resetting it up and re-renting and everything. And he's like, fuck you, let's finish your movie. If you go into overtime, you go into overtime, but it's way cheaper, and let's just finish the movie. And he rolled up his sleeves, and we didn't go into overtime. We shot all the setups in 2 hours and got everybody in their cars. But oh my god, that when you were talking about all hands on deck, let's make an indie movie. Anytime I'm on set and things start to get a little squeezy in my head, and I'm just like, I don't know how we're gonna fit the round, peg in the square hole. I don't know how to do. I just remember, fuck you, let's let's make your movie.
No, you're right, and that's the damn the torpedoes. Get it done.
But Santa Fe Film Festival, going to Santa Fe Film Festival right after
magnificent. I love it.
It's awesome. They have a great festival there, and all that downtown area. Game of Thrones, what's his name? George R.R. Martin has invested so much in that downtown Santa Fe area. It's wonderful. And Amazon with those stages in Albuquerque, that whole creative community is incredible. They shoot this native show out there. It's awesome.
No, it's funny because I did a show. The first time I played Richard Nixon was in the First Lady series for Showtime with Michelle Pfeiffer and Aaron Eckhart. And that was really incredible. And it was only on for a couple days. But then I get the call from J.J. Abrams' team. And they're like, hey, you want to do it again? I'm like, are you kidding? Second bite of the apple? For sure. And then all the same crew, a lot of the same crew, was like, oh, my God, it's you. Right? So it was really fun to kind of, what are you doing in Albuquerque? By the way, we love it. LA is cool, not far away, but this is the spot.
Yeah.
So it was so much fun to, again, be with those creative types that kind of like really expanded what they're doing. And that place is hot. I mean, just love it to death. I mean, love it to death.
Well, we should go make something there, and then we four-wall the movie.
Let's do it.
I mean, I honestly think that, like you said, the theater's going to be 75 seaters, 100 seaters.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the reason they were four-walling movies in the 70s at Geekscape is because they had they had reels made from negatives that they had to actually, somebody like a Lloyd Kaufman from Troma or a Roger Corman, God bless. We just talked about Roger with Sandy Carpenter 2 weeks ago on the podcast, and she made a ton of movies with Roger Corman, and we love Roger. And the only reason you would do it then, Geekscape, is there was no digital, right? You're putting the film under your arm and you're taking it to the theaters yourself.
Yeah,
so
like the 40-pound film under your arm, right?
Yeah, you got these canisters, and you're gonna go. So if you're Rudy Ray Moore making Dolomite, or you're, you got the Toxic Avenger and you're Lloyd Kaufman, you're driving between these towns and you're playing it for a week or two, and you're moving on. But
hey, I got a movie. Can you show it tonight, please? Just here, I'll help your projectionist build it.
What is
those
digital?
were the days.
But digital, you could be like, hey guys, like what's going on with this Deer Camp 86? Be like, hey, you know what? We're not going to be in one or two, screens, cities at a time. We can do 15, 25.
Well, we were, over the last weekend, we were in 1,900 screens. Okay.
Wait,
primarily we were in 1,900 screens. And, at the end of the day, we had some great relationships with the AMCs, the Imagines, the Regals, and there are a lot of great independent family-owned theater chains that really wanted to support, and I think they're turning into those destinations, right?
Like Lemley. I love the Lemleys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, same concept. So I don't think they're going away. Certainly, there will be challenges, but I don't know. I don't think we as a culture, and especially in the American, kind of so-called theater world, there still will have that. Europe still has big theaters. Europe, it's a big deal. You get dressed up to still go to the theater, so, but yes, there's a lot. Changing consumer behavior is extremely tough. COVID kind of became the earthquake through the entertainment business, if not multiple or every other, industry. But I think it taught people to kind of be a little bit more focused on what they got to do to get to the next stage. And maybe storytelling will get better, because I'm a big, maybe it's the optimist in me as an artist, but challenges create better stories. And I think we're going to see better stories. And it used to cost. I mean, I did a movie 10 years ago that 15 years ago would have cost $20 million that we made for about $5 million. That, now it's easier to make a better story. And by the way, the people that were involved in that movie, they made barely nothing just to be a part of it because of the story. And I think that's kind of where we got to go back to. Tell good stories. I don't mind. I enjoyed Fall Guy. I really did.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, I love seeing Lee Majors and Heather Thomas at the end.
Wasn't that fun?
I mean, I still have my $6 million man,
That's
Lee
a great
Majors.
tag, yeah.
And it was fun. I don't know if that's the norm or not, right? I don't know if the storytelling on the big screen is going to be relegated to just studio. Maybe it is. But I do think there's room for a lot of those movies that, with the right harmonizing of where we are in time, right? Because some movies just don't work. Rom-coms didn't work last year.
Yeah.
Now they are. Horror movies seem to kind of work, not slasher.
Yeah.
Those kind of are perennial. I mean, obviously we see those in the September, October range. But I think stories is kind of the aggregate. And once we find those that really kind of resonate, look out, because now we can make them for a lot less, and they can be a lot more accessible. And they'll be in a screen near you while you're eating nachos, which is still good. And
it'll be family made, because you're going to be in a small indie that's family run.
Right.
So you're going to get mama's cooking at that theater.
There you go.
Which would be a lot of fun. this music thing. I knew I liked you because we started talking Billy Bragg off camera long before, like 2 minutes before we started broadcasting. One of us mentioned Billy Bragg, Back to Basics, and then we started. Did you see the Beach Boys documentary that's on Disney Plus?
I did. I mean, my. It's funny. I have a connection to the Beach Boys. We're not related to the Wilsons and the
Sure.
Beach Boys, but my father actually performed on stage with the Beach Boys 25 years ago,
Whoa.
and we got to get to know those guys. But what an incredible moment in time. You know, again, we're not going to see people like that again. I don't think we're going to see a Tom Cruise like that again. I don't think we're going to see those legendary. You're not going to see a Stones like that again. You're not going to see the Beach Boys like that again. They came up at the right time. And let's not forget the other Beach Boy that people forget about, Glenn Campbell.
Oh, when Glenn Campbell joins the Beach Boys for like that album
Game
for
on.
that year, and it's like adding. It's like when a sports team creates a. It's like when the Warriors get Kevin Durant, and you're like, whoa. Holy crap! Where did the Rhinestone Cowboy was a part of the Beach Boys for a stretch? That's unstoppable. And Geekscape is. I watched it out of curiosity, and I said, "Hey, I love that music. We love the Beatles. We love Elvis. I love that.
Sure.
But the Beach Boys. Let me check this out." And I love the documentary. I've heard people accuse it of being a bit cursory. It does fall. It does end before I wanted it to end. I want more of that story
that's
in
true.
the 80s and 90s. I want to go to Kokomo. I want to see how they transitioned into older age and how their careers transitioned. But the chapter where they are talking about Lennon and McCartney coming to their hotel room and wanting to hear Pet Sounds, and how Pet Sounds in the U.S. was a failure in a bit for a stretch, but Pet Sounds is the legendary album, and Europe accepted it, but the U.S. didn't. There were so many stories like that. And then when you have the drummer picking up the hitchhikers and taking them to Manson's ranch, and then you realize that Quentin Tarantino put a version of that, interpreted a version of that story and put it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It starts connecting, and you're like, oh, Quentin Tarantino heard the Beach Boys drummer story, and that's what happened to the Sharon Tate murders.
Yes.
Was because the drummer from the Beach Boy introduced him to the producer that used to live in that house, and Manson went looking for that producer because he rejected his music. Oh my God, it's all spiraling. I'm sitting here at 4 a.m. watching this documentary.
A moment in time
Holy
of
crap.
American history, not just music history, but just a pop culture history. I mean, unbelievable influence. And
that story was crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, we got to just talk music on an episode of Geekscape because, like, Paul, we haven't even scratched the surface of the Wilson van and all the stuff that you guys know. And
well, that's our other skit, and that's a really fun thing.
I know
but
we're not going to do it here. We got to do it. We got to figure it out. When you guys
Let's do it
start doing
again.
some
Yeah.
charity shows,
I'll send you some music, and we can have
Oh
some
my
fun.
God.
But it's that's a lark. I mean, we never had a band name. We never even had a concept for it. It just started with a birthday party, and next thing you know, People Magazine did a story, and it's like, oh, maybe we should practice. No, we don't have time to practice. Let's just roll.
A lot of bands
Let's have
don't.
fun.
You got to go with it. Yeah, I love it.
Live, As
That's
I
so
always
much
say,
fun.
if you like it, you can thank me. If you hate it, you can blame my brother.
What did somebody call it? Somebody called it the fame or blame. When you are betting on yourself. Oh, I'm talking about crowdfunding and investing in yourself and building your own business creatively. And somebody goes, "Yeah, dude, when you do it yourself and nobody's hiring you to do it, it's blame or fame. Like, you either get famous doing it and it hits, or you only have yourself to blame. It's blame or fame. Like, you get either result is headed in your direction." And I was like, okay, here we go. Let's figure this out. Geekscape is look for a crowdfunding campaign for maybe some Geekscape related comics sometime in the fall. It was going to be this summer, but it takes a while to make some comics, and the baby's on her way. So I'm gonna have a baby, and then we'll start going back to the creative.
Invest
stuff.
in yourself,
Yeah.
and you'll never fail.
Dude.
Right? There you go.
Well, Paul, we could keep talking forever, man. It's been great.
Thank you for having me, dude.
We're going to take this to chat. We're going to take this to text.
Wait, did you just say chat AI? No.
I'm not real. I'm not a real person.
Oh, son of a! I've wasted all this time.
Talking to a bot.
Damn it! No, you've been great. Thank you so much.
It's fun,
And
dude.
let's do it again. Yeah, wait till I show you the music that that Patrick and I kind of with Mark kind of come up with via voice memo. Like we've never
cool.
recorded together. It's
Oh,
always
cool.
been, yeah, I got a hook, I got a line, and da 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 da. Now you go, and then next thing you know, I get and I go into my computer.
And you're sending
like,
each other stems and stuff like that. Then recording
yes,
each other's
that's it.
stems.
And that's
That's
how
so
like
cool.
all of a sudden we got it. Then I go in the closet and go, God, I got to sing way up there. Oh, I'm not talking for 3 days.
You guys picked the genres you guys wanted to sing early on, and now I talked to a lot of musicians who are getting in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, dude, my register's totally changed. But I wrote some checks for myself early on when I could hit these, and now I have to keep hitting them because playing them live, and through your son and going, you're familiar with Gene the Werewolf and a lot of the Geekscape oriented bands that we worked with, and dude, I love it, man. We got a lot to talk about. Geekscape is reward this man, Paul Wilson, with your patronage. Go see Deer Camp 86. If you're listening to this live, it's in theaters now. If you're listening to this within a week or two of release, you can find more information at Deer Camp 86. Maybe it's playing near you. And if you're listening to this a little later in the summer, maybe I'm a dad by now, but for sure this movie will be on your VODs and all your on-demands. So look for it. Again, you're going to get that information at deercamp86.com. Any socials to throw out, Mr. Wilson? Do you do the stuff?
I deercamp86.com. Certainly Deer Camp 86. That's all over the place. But how about Jonathan's going to be a dad.com?
I don't want you putting that URL in. I don't even know what you'd find at the moment. But you can find us at Geekscape.
Someone's going to snatch it. Someone's going to snatch it, and then you're going to have something.
They can have it. Well, Geekscape is you can find us at Geekscape. Just search for Geekscape on your socials. You'll find us. I'm at Jonathan London, I think, on one of them. But for sure, just email me, jonathan@geekscape.net. And we'll be promoting friends of ours like Paul and other projects. And Paul, if you find yourself for some miraculous reason in San Diego this summer for San Diego Comic-Con, come do like some promotion for the movie and appearance at the booth.
Love to. Thanks for having me, dude.
Dude, of course, man.
You're so good. You're so great.
Thanks, brother. Take care, Geekscapists. Don't hate, create. Peace.